Hey everybody, this is Eve West. Thank you for tuning into my YouTube channel. This channel is dedicated to promoting a book I wrote, an ebook. It's called Follow. You can find it on Amazon.com by Eve West under the Kindles tab. And the book gives a holistic view of spirituality, looking at it not just from a purely psychological and metaphysical standpoint, but also earthly as well, which corresponds to the reptilian brain, about what you can see, taste, touch, smell, and hear. And so typically when we think of spirituality, we think of, really the etheric aspect, the conceptual aspect of a human being, the mind aspect, in terms of intuition and creativity and, love and those types of things. But we also have a very earthly side as well. And so when you think of a human being, you should think of us as demigods. We are demigods. We are, spirits, house and flesh, if you will. So there's two aspects to who we are. And so, pretty much my channel is dedicated to promoting my book and looking at the various constructs of the matrix that help to divide the mind between Adam and Eve, or it's called Isis and Ra in Egyptian mythology, or in Freudian psychology, it's the ego and the id, or what have you. There's so many, different names for God and the devil, whatever you want to call it. But really my book just looks at the various constructs that actually, divide the mind in that type of way, in terms of media entertainment, the education system, the familial structure, the government structure itself, religion, all of these various constructs that actually work to divide the mind. And so I talk about the elite. Who actually govern this prison system for the soul. And I also talk about, just my personal life, the microcosm of my personal life and how that relates to the world at large, in terms of the holistic view of spirituality. And so everything is, and spirituality is one, is interconnected, if you will. And so when you find out the integration, when you start to become integrated and you start ascending, if you will, you start to see yourself and other people. And so the things that you used to judge based upon just your superficial sight of your reptilian brain, as your pineal gland opens, your third eye, you really start to see that you are everything and everything is you in a way. And so this particular video is very controversial. I've been really focusing on gang stalking lately, and how whenever you're ascending out of the matrix and you see through the illusion of the religions and media and so forth, media entertainment and education, whatever, what have you, you start to vibrate higher. And when you start to vibrate higher, the people around you, such as family and friends and just people that you interact with on a daily basis, are programmed by the matrix to actually accept the program. So when you're not accepting the program and they are, programmed, you become what we call a divergent. And when you become a divergent, they are designed to actually get rid of you, basically. It's like you start to resonate differently with people. And I've spoken about this in many of my other videos, if you will. But, for example, when you find out that Christianity is really an unholy religion, and that the suffix in Christian, IAN, means variant or part of Christ, then you realize that, Christianity doesn't allow you to embrace both your earthly and your spiritual. And that's why there's so much debauchery within the church, even going up to the Catholic Church, and how, little kids are molested and stuff like that. And, there's so much going on in the church itself. And so you see that, whenever you're just honoring your spiritual etheric self, your good, righteous God self, but you're not honoring your earthly self, your earthly becomes very debased and filthy and disgusting. And so as this happens, you start to come to a place of judgment when you do ascend and you give up the mind and body, and you realize all of the nasty things that are within your unconscious mind because you did not honor your earthly self. And so it brings your soul into a place of judgment, if you will. And so, you know, it's not anything to do with the soul itself, but it actually has to do with the construct that we live in, which is designed to bring you to judgment, if you will. And so I had a gang stalking incident, because gang stalking is highly psychological. Basically, when you're gang stalked, you are targeted by people. It could be within your dwelling. It could be, say, you know, like my last video, I was targeted at a restaurant, you know, trying to do something simple, like get the Wi-Fi password, or what have you. And, you know, the person really acted very, you know, just nasty towards me for even requesting, basically, you know, the Wi-Fi, or not requesting, but doing little things, if you will, to, you know, to make that difficult for me, or really kind of showing me, or singling me out, I should say, if you will. I highly encourage that you go back and you watch that last gang stalking video. But, you know, gang stalking is really just restricting your environment within the matrix system. And it's used to provoke you to anger and to exacerbate your emotional body, which is actually tied to your pineal gland. And so your pineal gland in balance is supposed to work for you, but when your pineal gland has been imbalanced, then it's satanic, because the planet of consciousness of Saturn is connected to your pineal gland. So Saturn would be, you know, I guess if your pineal gland was in a balanced state, it would be Saturn. But in an imbalanced state, it would be Satan. And so since, you know, the earthly has devolved into a very hellish state, then the pineal gland is very satanic in a way. And so when it has been imbalanced, then you start to really accrue a lot of affliction and suffering. I call it crucifixion. The New Age calls it an awakening, but, you know, really I like to refer to it in its Christian theological terms, because, you know, I feel that, you know, especially since Christianity was my programming, I really kind of look at the metaphysics behind Christianity, as opposed to superficially like most Christians do, to really paint a picture of what I have gone through and what I am still going through within the matrix environment, in my ascension, and my I guess that you would say, you know, and actually seeing through and having insight into the illusions that actually uphold this false matrix system. So, this video is one of the most controversial, actually it might be the most controversial video that I've ever done, or probably I'm ever going to do. Because in the matrix, we're really taught to stay away from talking about certain things, you know, such as sex and race. Sex and race. So this video has a lot to do with sex, has a lot to do with race, and it has something to do with gang stalking too. Because when I was doing a video about gang stalking and about, you know, being gang stalked within my dwelling, you know, I went to a nice location around here in Charleston, you know, because sometimes I like to pick different locations. And I said, you know, it's really nice day to day. You know, I'll go out here and tape. And there's a guy that came up and you know, started targeting me off the bat. And, you know, took a ball and was like throwing this ball at his dog or whatever the case is. And the ball almost hit me. And, you know, I was just like, okay, here we go. Street theater, right? But, you know, I pretty much I thought that it would just go away. That he would just go away. And that I would still be able to tape. Although I would kind of sort of be preoccupied with his activity around me. I didn't think that he would be as, I guess that you would say, I don't know, that he would bother me. A lot of times when I'm gang stalked, what have you, you know, it's something to where someone will say something to me, but it won't, you know, go past a certain point, if you will. But he just really kept on talking to me, and I was very annoyed and very pissed. And so I didn't let this show superficially, but inside I was really ticked off, because I really liked that location that I was at, and it was a really nice time. It was earlier in the morning, so, you know, it hadn't gotten too hot. And I thought, you know, I didn't have a whole lot of battery life on my phone. And so I was like, you know what, if I don't get this shot today, then it's a wash for today for the most part. And I mean, really, for the most part, it was. I don't think that the taping that I did afterward would have been as good as if I had done it during the time that I encountered this person. But this person came into my environment. I was sitting on the pier, pretty much, and he really just started talking to me, small talk, if you will, and you know, I really sought this as an opportunity to share some, information that I had been, esoteric information in my book. Because one thing about the matrix environment, whenever you start to share the truth, people within the environment actually run away from that. They actually run away from it. And so within our conversation, when I start to share some, esoteric knowledge and stuff like that, he really, constantly tried to divert the conversation. Really tried to divert the conversation. And so, like, what does that mean? Like, if I said something, like, for example, I asked him, I said, why do you think that we, blow the candles out on our birthday cake? And so when I said this, he started talking about something else. And so I brought it back to that point. I'm like, no, we're not going to go all around the world here. Why do you think that? And so I said, well, the reason why is because when you're blowing out the fire on your candle, it represents blowing out your knowledge. And so whenever we reincarnate back into the matrix system, we have no recollection of our past life or any information or knowledge that we accrued in our previous life. And so really you're celebrating your enslavement. That's the significance. And I told him, I said, we got on that conversation because he said his birthday was within a week or something like that. And so I was like, oh, that's something I can share, if you will, with him. It wasn't like I just said that at random. I know, like, in the Matrix, when you're waking up, you do become a little weird, or what have you, because your conscious and your unconscious mind is being bridged, and that's a whole lot of information to actually process within this, reptile brain, if you will. But I just thought I would share that information and try to kind of use that as a lead-in to share other information that I knew that he really didn't want to hear. Excuse me, but he kept diverting the conversation every time I tried to get into something that was remotely esoteric and insightful. And so because I was so pissed off with him, I really constantly tried to go there, and to try to control the conversation. And so, he started, talking to me as if it was something romantic. One thing about, the matrix system, if you will, when you start to experience gang stalking. Gang stalking is, designed to look like everyday occurrences. It's like, oh, you're sitting on the beach or whatever, or the pier, what have you, and this guy, he thinks you're cute, so he comes up to try to, talk to you or what have you, and tries to ask you out. So superficially, that's what it looks like, just like in some of my other gang stalking videos. Like at the Charleston consignment, when they tried to accuse me of stealing something, and when I inquired about, all the treatment that I had gotten, and why they were, trying to check my bag or whatever the case is, they said, oh, this is to protect your stuff, or, a lot of things are really kind of turned around and make it out like it's for your safety, or it's something to benefit you, or, this guy is really trying to talk to you because you're attractive or something like that, and he wants to get your number or something. It's designed to look like that on the surface, but like I said, if you have your pineal gland open and you see past the superficial, you will see that it is what you would call an energetic attack. But because he kept diverting the conversation, I really wanted to get around to my taping. I said, when he asked me, because he did ask me out later, and so I said, okay. I said, well, sure, why not? Because, I felt he had wasted my time and effort. And so I wanted an opportunity to waste his time and effort. And so I was like, you know what? If that's at a later time, then absolutely. At that point, I had been energetically drained, to be honest with you. But I thought it was worth it to meet back up with this person again and really spit some game. But it wasn't the type of game that people really think of or whatever, in terms of the Matrix. It's like when you say spit some game, you're like, oh, you're trying to rap to this person. I wasn't really trying to rap to him. He was not my type at all. Well, no, not really. No, he wasn't really my type very much. I wouldn't say I really warmed up to him, and I really thought that overall, when I did have a chance to speak to him, we really did hit it off. It was very odd. We did hit it off. And the reason why we hit it off so well was because although this person was a complete, asshole, he really was being himself. He was really being himself. And very seldom do you see people in the Matrix environment who feel comfortable enough being themselves. In the Matrix environment, it's all about conformity. It's all about, I can't say this or I can't do this. And if I say this or do this, then people are going to look at me in a very negative way. But, when I met up with him later on, at a restaurant, he said things that, people would try to hide. And although to my ego, it would be, I guess what you would say, to my ego, it would be offensive. To me, as a whole being, or as a being that's becoming more androgynous, where, I'm bridging my conscious and my unconscious mind together, I was very much attracted to his, I would say candor, attracted to his candor. Because when we first met, we started talking on the pier. This man, automatically started talking about black women. He's a white male. And he started talking about black women and how much he loved, black women, if you will. And, how black women he felt were much better than white women. And, and as he was saying this or what have you, it wasn't like he was talking about black women being better than white women in terms of, things in a very, holistic way. When I say holistic, like mentally, physically, and emotionally, it really corresponded to sex. And there's the stereotype that, white men are only interested in black women for sex. And so, he started saying, talking about, just saying certain things, saying, you're beautiful. And, he showed me a picture of his, of a romantic acquaintance of his that was a black woman. And, he really made it known that he was very interested in me because, not just because of me as a person, he did mention that I was smart or what have you, but it had a lot to do with the fact that I'm black. And so I wanted to speak to him even more because my book deals a lot with race. And so I really felt that I could use him to talk about, and give validity to a lot of the information that I share in my book regarding race. And so, when he was like, you want to meet up later? And I was like, sure. He's like, where do you want to meet? And I was like, let's meet at the library, because I had, I plan on uploading my videos at the library. So I was like, well, let's go ahead and meet at the library. And, I really did not want to, go anywhere with this person. I mean, essentially, I really just wanted to, I guess in a way, dissect his mind, really, dissect his mind and really try to get into what I would consider to be the collective unconscious mind. Because, when you're ascending, you are dealing with the collective unconscious. Anyone you meet within the system, any soul within the system represents the collective unconscious. And the unconscious mind is what has been put into your psyche that you're not aware of. Remember, the ego is only able to process a certain amount of information, whereas the unconscious catches everything. So it catches the things that you saw but didn't see, or the things you heard but didn't hear. And, because the unconscious mind, too, is under severe restriction and limited in expressing itself, it's connected to the solar plexus, which is connected to the genitals, which is a very sexual, masculine energy. So there's a lot of filth, if you will. There's a lot of filth between the mask of the ego. So when I meet people nowadays, I don't just meet them physically. I meet them also energetically. So I meet the person that they show me, but then the filth underneath of what they show me. But he was actually giving me a lot of his filth, and I felt, oh, okay. He was really like, sharing it like, this is me. You know what I mean? Like, I think, black women pretty much are just, here for sex, pretty much. And, black people have sex, and that's what they like doing. And, all of this stuff. And most people, they'll try to hide that stuff. But he's like, no, that's pretty much me. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. And so I was like, oh, you'd be great for my book. I definitely want to interview you. So he was like, I didn't say that to him, but in the back of my mind, I was like, this is a good test subject. And so, I was like, let's go to the library. He was like, I don't want to meet the library, And in hindsight, I saw this was pretty lame, you know what I mean? But I didn't really like him anyway, so I was like, okay, well, there's a restaurant that's down the road. So I was like, hey, you want to meet there later? And so he agreed. And so we were supposed to meet there around 6:30, and because at first I said, let's meet at 8, because he had really taken a lot of my time, and I really felt that I had to make up for the time that he had taken. And so he was like, well, 8's kind of late. So I was like, okay. So I was like, well, you want to meet around 6:30, because there's a lot of places around that I think they have happy hour between 4 to 7. So I was like, well, 6:30, typically you can catch happy hour. I was like, if that's something, I don't really drink, but that's something you want to do, that's fine. And so he was like, he agreed to 6:30. So I was very, like, throughout my day, infuriated. I was infuriated. I was angry. I came back to my parents' house, and I was angry. I spoke to my sister, and they realized that I was just in a very, just negative state, because I had made plans and God laughed. They say you make plans and God laughs. So my plan that day was to go out to the pier, to do some taping, to upload my tape, to take a nap, and to to get back up, and to do some more taping. And so, or uploading, I should say. But I was, that all got knocked off, if you will, because of, me having this encounter with this person. So, when I got well, the thing is that we were supposed to meet at 6:30, but he did not get there until like a little after 7, I think. And this ticked me off, because not only do I feel that I feel that he wasted my time at the pier, but he actually was 30 minutes late. That totally ticked me off. I was just like, okay, this person is not even going to show up or whatever. But he did show. But 30 minutes later, and didn't say, oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. He was just like, oh, I'm dropping a friend off over here, and so after I do that, then I'll be there at the restaurant or what have you. So I'm just angry. But this is what gang stalking is about. Really just, exacerbating your emotional body, and just really I guess what you would say, provoking you to anger, because I had my time wasted now twice. And so, I was just saying to myself, I can't believe this. But, we sat down or what have you. He continued doing what he had done at the pier. Every time I would bring up something, some information that I wanted to get out of him, he kept diverting the conversation to something else. It was very strange, if you will, how what was happening. It was kind of like, if you have a conversation about, let's say if you're starting to have a conversation about, I don't know, you want to have a conversation about race, and then, you say something along the lines of, race is, very important, I think, to our society, what have you, although we're taught that, race is not a big deal. Why is it that when we go to, especially within governmental agencies, we have to click a box for our race, but at the same time, we're told that race is not a big deal. We all bleed red, and so within that conversation, he would say, or the person would say something like, "Oh yeah, governmental agencies. Yeah, I went to the DMV the other day, and the line was just so long." So this is an example of what happened within the conversation. I mentioned something about race and how race being important, and how, especially within our governmental agencies, that, we have to click a box when it comes to race or what have you. But when I said governmental agency, then he diverts the conversation to how he went to the DMV and how the line was so long and he was waiting there for hours or whatever, and what have you. So this type of rhetoric is also used as a gang stalking tactic to provoke you to anger, because you're really trying to focus on one thing, but the person is trying to make you focus on something else that you don't want to focus on. They keep trying to stray the conversation in another direction, away from what you truly want to speak of. And so during the conversation with this guy, he really, he really spoke about Black women, and in a certain light. He really spoke of us in terms of, we're basically whores, basically. It's funny because he invited me out, right? And I was gonna actually meet him at the library because I really wasn't interested anyway. And I was just like, I don't really want to waste my time. I want him to know I strictly want to meet with you because I want to really stick it to you and tell you off about pretty much how you wasted my time for the most part, but he wanted to meet at the or not at a restaurant, but he wanted to meet somewhere else. So I was like, okay, fine, let's meet at a restaurant. But the way that he was speaking to me was like, I was like some type of gold digger or something like that for wanting him to take me out. It was very weird. It was kind of like, I don't know. It was kind of like, basically insinuating because he paid for my dinner that I owed him some type of like sexual exchange or something. He was just kind of like, you're very attractive, where are we going afterward? And he really delayed paying the bill. It was funny, because I asked him, I was like, are you treating? Okay, fine. I was already ticked off by this point because he had been 30 minutes late. So I was like, you know what? I said, I'm going to get the most expensive thing on the menu. He was like, He was like, what? And I was like, no, whatever. But I did get something, kind of sort of expensive because, I felt that he had wasted my time. And I really just wanted him to know how much I was, just very ticked off with that, in a very covert, underhanded, kind of passive aggressive way. But I really, felt very upset when he paid for my dinner. And he and really tried to force me to get a drink. I told him before on the pier that I don't really drink alcohol anymore. And he was like, please, no, I insist. And even the waiter, and this is how gang stalking works too. The waiter was even insisting. Like, oh, go ahead and get one, whatever the case is. And so I really wanted them to shut up. And so I got a drink. I knew I wasn't going to drink it, but I got a drink anyway because I really was just tired of them bantering back and forth trying to get me to get a drink. So I said, you know what? I'll get a drink, and I'll just pretend to sip it. And so, it ticked me off because, if you hadn't bought that drink, your bill would have been cheaper, right? It would have been, or less expensive of a bill. So I guess that you would say, not really complaining, but, asking me for money. He was like, oh, I only have like this certain amount of money. He was like, I would have to go back to my car and to get some more money. So I was like, well, that's fine. You go ahead and do that. Because I'm thinking to myself, you invited me out and you did not want to go to the library. So since you didn't want to go to the library, I said, well, we can go here, and you agreed. And you're the one who ran up your bill or what have you, trying to feed me drinks and so forth. And so you go ahead and you eat that, and you take care of it. And so, he paid the bill. And he didn't pay the bill until we went outside because he was like, I have money in my car. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. But by that time I had pretty much been done. I was really tired because I didn't get the nap that I really anticipated getting after doing my taping and stuff like that. And he, what did he do? He, we were outside or what have you, and I thought, hey, he was going to pay the bill at the front or whatever. I don't know. But he went to his car to get some money, and so the waiter came back to the car that we were at, and he in his car, and he was like, hey, where's the money? And so he's like, oh, here you go. So he finally paid the bill. And as we were standing there, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm about to leave or what have you and go to sleep, he was just constantly talking to me, and he was like, can I have a hug or what have you? And I was like, sure, why not? And so when he gave me a hug, it was very funny because he was like, I guess what you would say, touching, like very, very, I guess you would call, just very physical, really like, I don't know, I guess kind of groping type of thing. And it was weird though, because, most men, if you're groped or something, then, they will grope you on your buttocks or your breast or somewhere, that's sexual. But his was like an all over thing. Like, I want to know what your shoulders are like, and I want to know what your back is like, that type of thing. So I thought this was very strange. And, I'm very different now. Before, if someone had done something like that to me before I started waking up in the Matrix, I would have totally kicked him in the nuts. But I really wanted to know what he was doing. I was just like, that's weird. It's like, why is he so physical with, all over? It's an all over thing. But I was like, okay, whatever. And he just starts talking about, how black women, we, what did he say? He said something along the lines we get men to pay for our dinners and then eventually pay our bills and like pay our cell phone bills and stuff like that. And so really to me, he was insinuating, you know what, since I've paid for your dinner, then you owe me something, you know? And this really starts to go back to a lot of the esoteric information that I found out, because Black women are portrayed in a very poor light, especially in the media. And in my next video, the part 2 to this video, I'm going to really talk a lot about this. And, you know, how we're portrayed as whores. We're portrayed as whores. And, you know, I thought it was a slap in the face because I wasn't really going to go to the restaurant. You know, I was like, oh, whatever. Let's go to the library. But he said he wanted to go somewhere else. So I said, okay, you know, that's fine if that's what you want. But, you know, in seeing that he was the one who ran up the bill, and, you know, this is somewhere that he agreed to, right? Because he didn't want to go to the library where it would have been free. And now he's saying, I paid for something for you, so now you owe me like some type of sexual exchange, if you will. And then making the connection to how Black women are portrayed as sluts and whores, and how that whole stereotype between Black women and white men, and how, you know, the stereotype is that many white men see Black women as whores, you know, that stereotype. I said to myself, you know, I kind of got that Eminem song in my head, like I am, whatever you say I am. If I wasn't, then why would I say I am? And so I really got ticked off. I said, so, you know, you want to hang out or what have you? I said, you know what? Let's do that. I said, you know, I'm going to allow this guy to see exactly what he's not getting, if you will. And I did. You know, I let him see exactly what he wasn't getting, and then I sent him on his way, hot and bothered, and and, you know, I showed it off. I was like, hey, you know, this is what, I didn't say exactly this is what you're not getting, but, you know, I mean, in so many words, you know, I was like, hey, you know, see how wonderful, you know, I am and how I look. But, yeah, I'm really tired. And thanks for the free dinner, you know, but, I'm going, you know, to bed now because I'm really tired. And I really was tired. He really had energetically drained me. But at the same time, I appreciated how, candid he was about his whole idea about Black women, you know, just all Black people want to do is have sex, and you know, how Black women just you know, do sexual favors so men can pay their bills, and, you know, and I really did have a very good heart-to-heart conversation with him once I could, you know, got past all of the, you know, BS about Black women and stuff like that, and how, you know, Black women just we're tied to sex or whatever, being sluts or whores. You know, we talked a lot about, you know, his hobbies and things like that, and I really got a chance to learn him and learn some things that are important to him. And so, you know, one thing when you're waking up in the matrix, you start to get past the superficial, get past the programming, and really try to go to the heart. Try to go to the heart of someone and who they really are. And so, you know, I was really able to see that despite how he felt about me superficially, that there was a heart in there somewhere, you know? And so, you know, it was, I had at first a very conflicting view because I was ticked off, but me being ticked off at him and me being offended as an ego because I'm superficially a Black woman, once I got past that, then I was like, oh, you know, this is really who this person is. You know, I can peel back all the programming that he's gotten and, you know, really see, you know, what makes him happy and what's important to him, and that type of thing. And so we shared a moment, And, I thought that, before leaving, I really saw him as a very cool person. I did. I saw him as a cool person. I really wish other people would have been more candid about, their feelings and about race and about sex and so forth. Because most times I have to feel the filth of someone and the things that they don't want to tell me. But with him, he just told me. He's like, yeah, this is me. So I knew that I wasn't giving him anything, but I was like, let's go, let's find you somebody, let's find you a nice black girl that'll give it up tonight. So we went online and we started looking like for hookups and stuff like that for him. And I was just like, birds of a feather flock together. Maybe you'll find somebody that, that's down for the same thing that you are. I feel like in this world, especially when you can get with a kindred spirit, you should have what you want. Essentially, you should have what you want. And you shouldn't feel guilty for it, because when you reach a higher taxonomy of knowledge, you realize that who we are within the matrix environment is what we've been made to be. And so I had to look at him in that way, because in looking at all of my programming and how when I bridged my unconscious mind, I realized that I hate black people and I'm black. And I hate black women. And so I'm a black woman, right? So I was like, okay, where'd that come from? When I was bridging my unconscious with my ego. But when I saw all the television shows like Love and Hip Hop and Basketball Wives and, the Housewives of Atlanta, and, I saw my programming growing up where, black men were portrayed in a very negative light. And, how my dad was a raging alcoholic growing up, and how my aunts and uncles, or my uncles, often cheated on their wives or beat their wives or stole their money, especially within a theta brainwave frequency before the age of 7. Your mind is being solidified. And so all of that programming, and the fact that I married a black man and he happened to turn out just like many of the black men in my family in lots of ways, it really solidified in my unconscious, not conscious, but in my unconscious mind, demonizing black people everywhere we look. Black men especially are portrayed in a negative, a poor light on television. Very seldom do we see a very upstanding black man. And so people don't realize, but programming works two ways. It doesn't just work in terms of, like white people demonizing black people, but the programming also makes black people demonize black people. And so, as an ego, with this guy I met, I was offended in a way. Well, really, I wasn't. Kind of, sort of. Really, no, I wasn't offended by that. I was just offended that he wasted my time. But what I'm saying is that he and I really shared a hatred for the black race. We shared that. And the thing about it is that I consciously share that because I know how it came to be. Whereas, at least he did not disclose to me that he consciously shared that with me. And so from the superficial, I'm conscious of it and how my programming, was solidified. Whereas he, he's just a victim, if you will, of his environment. So I don't really see myself as a victim per se. In a way I do, but in a way I don't. I think you're more of a victim when you have ignorance. But I don't really have ignorance anymore. I have understanding. And so you could really feel bad about yourself when you really hate black people and not know how that came to be. But if you really hate black people and you saw you were conditioned to hate black people and you were conditioned to hate yourself, like when I was a little girl, my mom straightened my hair. She was like, your hair is your beauty. So she was subliminally telling me that, my kinky hair was not, was not beautiful. When my family, when they would call me white girl, and they were, I thought it was a pet name, but they were conditioning me before the age of 7 in a theta brainwave frequency and solidifying this whole idea that being white was better. And if your skin got darker, then, you weren't beautiful. There were times when it would be mentioned that my skin was getting dark in the summer. We're at the beach. And I'm like, well, yeah, we're at the beach, you get darker. but that was all solidifying within my mind that black was not beautiful. And so once I found out, when I bridged my unconscious mind with my conscious mind to see all of that self-hatred in there that I wasn't even aware was there, I start to understand. I start to remember. So the whole purpose of this matrix environment is to dismember. But the purpose of your life's purpose is to remember, is to put yourself back together and to know thyself. So, when you're imposing judgment upon yourself and really imposing judgment upon other people, then you've been dismembered. But once you reach a higher taxonomy of knowledge, then you remember. And so you get that phallus back, if you will, that's been taken away from you. So the whole purpose is to gain the masculine, to gain the phallus, not to dismember, but to remember. And when you remember, then you have reached, I guess, what you would call enlightenment, or whatever the case is. So in my next video, I'm going to talk a lot more about race and sex, especially as it pertains to pop culture, and really how that correlates to my experience that I had with this guy, if you will, and my so-called date that I had with this guy that I met on the pier. So thanks guys for watching. I will see you in part 2.